The wind clawed at Ella's coat as she stood at the edge of the muddy auction yard, her boots half swallowed in the thick slush. Rain tapped a steady rhythm on the tin roof overhead, but most of the crowd had retreated beneath the covered viewing area, sipping coffee and murmuring about cattle prices and rising feed costs. The auctioneer's voice, raw and worn like sandpaper, echoed through the loudspeaker, selling off livestock one after another like tools in a garage sale. It was the last hour of the day, and fatigue had settled in like fog. She didn't flinch when the next horse was led out, if it could be called led. The animal stumbled more than walked, its legs trembling under its emaciated frame. A few people laughed. Someone made a joke about glue. The horse collapsed halfway to the ring, a handler muttering as he tugged the rope, trying to coax the creature up again. Its ribs showed like someone had drawn them in charcoal, and its eyes held the glassy, sunken look of something already halfway gone. "God, just put it down," a woman in the crowd muttered, loud enough for Ella to hear. "That thing's not going to make it to next week." Ella's throat tightened. Her fingers curled into fists inside her damp gloves. She wasn't sure what made her move forward. Maybe it was the silence and the horse's suffering. Maybe it was the memory of her father's voice. Asterisk, sometimes the ones worth saving don't ask to be saved. Asterisk. The auctioneer cleared his throat, amused. Lot 47. A real beauty, ain't she? No minimum bid. Heck, I'll pay you to take her. The crowd chuckled. Ella stepped out of the shadows and into the open. The laughter quieted, then gave way to murmurs. "Is that Ella Brooks? She hasn't been around horses since her daddy died. Didn't she lose everything?" She didn't respond. Her eyes stayed on the horse, every breath from the animal's chest of visible battle. The auctioneer blinked. "You placing a bid, miss?" $10, she said, loud and steady. A pause. Then laughter again, sharper now, cutting. Someone clapped sarcastically. $10 for a ghost with a mane. "Sold," the auctioneer shouted. "More for entertainment than transaction. To the lady with a soft heart and no sense." The gavel came down. Ella stepped closer, crouching beside the collapsed mare. Her hair stuck to her cheeks in wet strands, but she didn't wipe it away. The mare didn't lift her head. Her breathing was shallow, eyes nearly closed, but her ears flicked, just once, a faint tremor of attention. Ella whispered, "You're not done yet, are you?" She named her Dawn right then, not because she looked anything like a new beginning, but because Ella needed to believe she might be. By the time she got the horse into her trailer, a shaky, rust-bitten thing that groaned every time it turned, a few remaining spectators were still chuckling. Someone filmed her on their phone. A couple kids pointed and laughed. She didn't care. The drive home was slow. Rain lashed against the windshield, and the old truck's wipers screeched like they were in pain. In the rearview mirror, she could barely make out the silhouette of Dawn in the trailer. There were moments she thought the mare had stopped breathing altogether. Back on her land, a patch of overgrown pasture, 2 sagging fence lines, and a tin shelter that used to be a chicken coop. Ella parked and rushed to the back. She opened the trailer, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then Dawn stumbled forward, hooves dragging. She took 3 weak steps before collapsing again, halfway in the straw Ella had scattered in the paddock. Ella knelt beside her, pulling an old wool blanket from the truck. She covered Dawn's back and placed one hand gently on the horse's neck. "You're home," she whispered. "If you want to go, I won't stop you. But if there's even a piece of you left that wants to live, I'll fight like hell with you." Thunder cracked in the distance. A cold gust rattled the trees. Somewhere in the dark, a coyote called. Ella stayed beside the horse through the night. She didn't sleep, didn't even lie down, just sat in the wet straw with her back against the fence post, her knees drawn to her chest, and a flashlight on the ground casting a soft glow around them. She thought of her father again, the way he used to sing to the horses when one was sick, said they could feel rhythm better than they understood words. She hummed a tune she barely remembered, the kind that used to lull colts to sleep. The mare didn't respond. When morning finally came, the world outside the paddock looked the same, gray sky, dew on the grass, fog clinging to the edges of the field. Ella stretched and stood slowly, her joints aching from the cold. She turned to Dawn, expecting the worst. But the horse's head was up. Her eyes were open, focused. Ella held her breath. Then, without sound or drama, Dawn's left ear flicked again. And this time, she moved her nose toward Ella's hand. Just a few inches. But it was enough. Ella knelt down again, tears stinging her eyes as she touched the mare's face. "You're still in there," she whispered. "I see you." The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a thin sliver of gold across the field. It caught on Dawn's fur, patchy, dull, but still catching light. It was the first time since she'd seen her that the horse looked alive. Not whole, not healed, but present. Ella sat back on her heels, her throat thick. This was the beginning. Not of a rescue, not yet, but of something harder, something slower. The fight for Dawn had begun, and Ella would not lose. The morning after Dawn lifted her head, the world felt different. Not warmer, not brighter, just different, as if something invisible had shifted. Ella poured a bucket of warm mash, softened oats mixed with molasses, and carried it carefully toward the paddock. The horse still lay curled in the straw, legs tucked awkwardly beneath her bony frame, but her eyes followed Ella now. That alone was progress. Ella crouched a few feet away and set the bucket down gently. "It's yours if you want it," she murmured. The air was crisp with the scent of pine and damp earth. Dawn didn't move at first. Then, slowly, she turned her muzzle toward the bucket, nostrils flaring. It took her almost 10 minutes to reach it. Every motion was stiff, hesitant, but determined. When her lips finally brushed the food, Ella could barely contain her breath. A shaky chew, a pause, then another bite. Not much, but enough to call it victory. Ella smiled, tears welling up again. It was a strange thing, how easily the heart could be lifted by a small miracle. By noon, Ella had a visitor. A dust-covered pickup pulled up the gravel drive, coughing black smoke as it idled to a stop. Out stepped Dr. Weller, the town's only large animal vet, an older man with a wiry beard, a permanent squint, and a reputation for being brutally honest. He didn't wait for a greeting. "Heard you dragged home a corpse with hooves." Ella crossed her arms. "I didn't drag her. She walked, sort of." Dr. Weller glanced at the paddock, eyes narrowing. Dawn had managed to stand, though barely. Her legs trembled with each shift in weight. He pulled his stethoscope from the truck and walked past Ella without another word. The examination was quiet, save for the sound of Dawn's shallow breaths and the occasional grunt from the vet. He checked her teeth, heart, and lungs, then stepped back, rubbing his chin. "Well, she's worse than she looks," he said flatly. "And she already looks like hell." "I know. You sure this is worth it?" he asked, not unkindly. "Could be months before she's steady. Years before she's strong. She might never trust a human again." Ella didn't blink. "I'm not doing this for what she can give back." Weller studied her, then let out a tired sigh. "I'll give you antibiotics and a painkiller injection. Beyond that, it's up to her." Before he left, he added, "Don't let hope make you blind. It's a beautiful thing until it turns cruel." That night, Ella sat with Dawn under the stars, reading aloud from her father's journal. The pages were yellowed and water-stained, but the words were steady. Lessons on hoof care, calming techniques, herbal remedies, and anecdotes from his years training difficult horses. In one margin, he'd written, "Asterisk, the ones who've suffered don't ask for gentleness. They demand it." Asterisk. She looked at Dawn and felt the truth of that note deep in her bones. The days blurred into a routine. Morning feedings, slow walks across the paddock, grooming sessions with a soft-bristled brush. At first, Dawn flinched at every touch, her muscles clenching like she was bracing for a blow. But Ella moved slow, always speaking in low tones, never pushing past what the mare could handle. The first time Dawn allowed the halter without resistance, Ella celebrated with silent tears. Not because of the act itself, but because of the trust it represented. She understood it wasn't about the rope. It was about the history wrapped around it. One evening, about 2 weeks in, Ella returned from a store to find the paddock gate wide open. Panic shot through her like a firecracker. She dropped her groceries and ran. Her boots slipped in the wet grass as she sprinted down the dirt trail behind the property. Heart pounding. "Dawn!" she shouted, voice cracking. Dawn. She scanned the tree line, breath shallow. Then she spotted her, standing near the edge of a dry creek bed, one hoof dangerously close to a jagged drop. She was shaking, eyes wide, body frozen. Ella didn't rush. She approached slowly, hands out, whispering the whole way. "It's okay. I'm here now." When she reached her, Dawn pressed her muzzle into Ella's chest, as if hiding. Someone had opened the gate. She was sure of it. The latch wasn't loose. There were boot prints in the mud, too large to be hers. Suspicion settled in her stomach like a stone, but there was no proof, and no time to chase shadows. That night, Dawn refused to eat. She stood with her head low, refusing touch. Ella didn't force her. She just stayed beside her, keeping vigil. The next morning, Ella called Dr. Weller. "She's regressing," she said. "She was doing better. Now she's jumpy again." "She's remembering," he replied. "Healing's never straight. It winds back and forth like a creek before it finds its way." Then he said something that made her blood chill. That horse belonged to somebody before. Someone who made her like this. Ella hadn't asked, hadn't wanted to know. But now her mind raced. She remembered the way Dawn flinched at hands, how she froze at loud voices. Someone hadn't just neglected her, they'd broken her. Weller confirmed it. She was raced young. Too young. Pushed too hard. Too fast. When she didn't perform, they dumped her at a kill lot. Happens more often than people care to admit. Ella hung up, barely breathing. Her hand rested on Dawn's neck, and for the first time, she felt not pity, but rage. "She deserved better," she whispered. "So did you." That night, she made a decision. Dawn wasn't going to just survive. She was going to be seen. A flyer arrived in the mail a few days later, folded into her electric bill. It read, *Small Town Revival Festival. Share your story. Inspire others. Horse exhibition this Sunday. Ella stared at it for a long time. She didn't care about ribbons or recognition. But maybe, just maybe, standing in front of those people who had laughed, with Dawn by her side, might mean something. To both of them. She taped the flyer to her refrigerator and stood at the door of the paddock. "Do you think we could?" she asked softly. Dawn looked up. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Not fear, not hesitation. Something quieter. Readiness. Ella stepped forward and placed her hand gently against Dawn's shoulder. The mare didn't move away. Didn't flinch. Just stood there, calm and still, breathing in sync with the woman who had chosen her. The road ahead would not be easy, but it would be theirs. Together. A thin fog hovered over the pasture as Ella slid the barn door open. The early morning light spilled through in pale ribbons, brushing against the dust in the air. Dawn stood in the paddock, head high, posture steadier now, still lean, still scarred, but alive in a way that had once seemed impossible. The weeks had carved muscle along her shoulders, a quiet strength born not from force, but from the simple persistence of survival. Ella walked toward her with a halter in one hand and a rope lead in the other. She no longer approached with caution. Dawn no longer shied away. Their movements had become a rhythm, slow, mutual, almost ritualistic. "Ready," Ella whispered. The mare dipped her head, allowing the halter without resistance. They began their morning walk, not on the road but around the training circle Ella had carved into the field, using wooden stakes and rope. The ground was uneven, the circle crude, but it was enough. Dawn's gait was still uneven, but no longer painful. She trotted willingly when asked, slowed with voice commands, responded to gentle cues, like they'd been working together for years. What they were building wasn't obedience, it was understanding. Ella noticed the way Dawn's ears swiveled when she spoke, the way her eyes softened when she laughed. She didn't ride her, not yet. Maybe never. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the bond forming, unshakable and quiet. Later that day, Dr. Weller pulled into the driveway again, carrying a weathered box of supplies. Ella met him with a wave, wiping sweat from her brow. "I don't believe it," he said, watching Dawn trot along the fence line. "I thought I'd be here putting her down within the week. Now look at her." "She did all the work," Ella replied. Weller gave a grunt of agreement. "What's all this about you entering her in the revival festival?" Ella hesitated. I'm thinking about it. Not for show. Just for something to prove to her. To both of us. Weller opened the box and handed her a tub of hoof salve. She'll be the only one there without a shine on her coat or medals in her bloodline. I know, Ella said, and she'll be the only one who fought her way back from death. The week passed in quiet preparation. Ella polished Dawn's halter, stitched patches in her old trailer, and even painted a name on the side in faded blue. Dawn. Each evening, she worked with the mare in silence, practicing slow circles, walks, halts. She didn't teach tricks, just trust. But not everyone shared her enthusiasm. One afternoon, while filling a feed bucket at the co-op, she overheard two women talking behind her. She's bringing that horse. It's a pity parade. She thinks she's inspiring. It's just sad. Ella didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She'd heard versions of those voices all her life. When she got home, she sat in the barn with Dawn, stroking her mane. They don't understand you. They don't even try. Dawn nudged her gently, and Ella smiled through the ache in her chest. But just when things began to feel steady, the past returned. It came in the form of a stranger leaning against her gate. Middle-aged, polished boots, sunglasses too expensive for this side of town. He didn't wave, didn't introduce himself, just stared at Dawn. She's still alive, he muttered. Ella approached slowly. Do I know you? No, he said, but I know that horse. She felt something cold gather in her stomach. She was mine once, he said. Raced her too early. She broke down before her second year. Never recovered. I dumped her at auction a while back. Didn't expect anyone to actually pick her up. Ella's fists clenched. You dumped her like garbage. She didn't have the heart for racing. Couldn't win. Soft horses don't make money. He shrugged. You'd have been better off letting her go. Ella took one step closer. Get off my land. The man raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. He turned, walking slowly back toward a waiting car. Before he left, he said, if she collapses in front of a crowd, don't say no one warned you. That night, Ella barely slept. The man's words echoed in her ears. But when she checked on Dawn before dawn, the mare stood tall at the fence, watching the sky shift from dark to pale gold. The morning of the festival arrived like thunder. Ella rose before the sun, dressed in worn jeans and her father's old barn jacket. She brushed Dawn until her coat held a subtle gleam and plaited her mane with simple braids. There would be other horses at the festival, sleek, trained, sparkling under spotlights. Dawn didn't need that. She only needed to be seen. The trailer rattled down the old highway. A cardboard sign taped inside the window. Please be kind. She's come a long way. When they arrived, the festival grounds were already buzzing. Families wandered between booths. Children ran with sticky fingers, and music played over cheap speakers. At the far end of the grounds, the horse exhibition area gleamed. Clean white fences, judges with clipboards, rows of horses glistening under sun polish. Ella led Dawn from the trailer slowly. Heads turned. Whispers followed. That's her. The dying horse. She brought that to compete. But she didn't look at them. She looked only at Dawn. They waited at the far end of the holding pen while the first horses performed, trotting with precision, bowing on command, rearing gracefully. Applause followed each act. Then came the call. Next up, Ella Brooks and her mare, Dawn. She led her through the gate. The silence was sudden. No music, no announcer flair, just the sound of hooves on soil. Ella didn't perform tricks. She walked, stopped, turned, whispered commands, barely audible. Dawn responded each time, not flawlessly, but with effort and focus. There was no choreography, no drama, and yet, something powerful filled the space. A horse once discarded as worthless now moved with quiet pride. A woman once broken by loss now stood tall, with a partner who chose to live. Near the end of the demonstration, Ella stopped in the center of the ring and dropped the rope. Dawn didn't move. Then, slowly, she walked back to Ella and rested her head on her shoulder. A wave of silence swept the crowd. Then tentative clapping. Then louder. Then cheers. Not for perfection, for resilience. As they left the ring, Dr. Weller met her at the gate, eyes red. That wasn't a performance, he said. That was a prayer. Ella looked back at Dawn, her heart thudding with gratitude. The real reward wasn't applause. It was the fact that Dawn had walked toward her on her own. That was the miracle. And yet, as the sun began to fall, something even more unexpected was still to come. The wind softened as evening settled across the festival grounds, carrying the scents of hay, fried food, and warm earth. The applause from Dawn's quiet performance still echoed in Ella's ears as she led the mare back to the trailer. It wasn't the kind of ovation that came with ribbons or trophies. It was something gentler, awed, respectful, almost sacred. People parted without speaking as the two of them walked past, as if unwilling to break the fragile magic that still lingered in their wake. Ella opened the trailer's side door and poured fresh water into a bucket. Dawn drank slowly, her breath steady, ears flicking at distant sounds. She didn't look tired, though she had every right to be. She looked alert, present, like she was still absorbing everything, every face, every movement, every scent. Ella leaned against the trailer wall, arms crossed, eyes scanning the sky, turning shades of lavender and soft gold. A young girl wandered over, no older than 10, her cheeks sticky with cotton candy and her eyes wide with curiosity. "Is she the one that was going to die?" she asked, pointing shyly at Dawn. Ella looked down at her, then back at the mare. "Yeah, she's the one." The girl stepped closer. "She looks like she knows something." Ella smiled. "She does." The girl hesitated, then reached out. Dawn sniffed her hand, then nuzzled it gently. The girl giggled, then ran off. Ella stood in the silence that followed, something swelling in her chest, something like pride, but deeper. It felt like purpose. By the time the festival wound down, most of the horses had been loaded and the spectators had begun to drift away. Tents folded, trash gathered, lights dimmed. Ella stayed by the trailer, not quite ready to leave. Something about the air felt unfinished, as though something else needed to happen before they could go. She opened the trailer door, expecting Dawn to follow her lead and step inside. But the mare didn't move. She stood at the edge of the ramp, head high, eyes fixed on the horizon, ears forward like she was listening to something distant, something only she could hear. "Come on, girl," Ella said softly. "Long day. Let's get home." Still, Dawn didn't move. Then, without cue, without signal, the mare turned away from the trailer and began walking, not aimlessly but deliberately, toward the field where the exhibition had taken place. Ella blinked, startled. She glanced around, no one watching, no ropes, no fences, just open ground beneath the sky bleeding orange into night. "Dawn," she called. But the horse didn't look back. Ella didn't chase her. She followed slowly, heart thumping, unsure what was happening but too moved to interfere. Dawn walked to the center of the field, where they had performed just hours earlier. She stopped there, standing in perfect stillness, beneath the fading sun. And then, without warning, she reared. Not awkwardly, not unbalanced. It was fluid, powerful, a full stretch toward the sky, hooves slicing the air, mane flying like wildfire. She landed clean, snorted, pawed the earth once, and then began to gallop. Not in fear, not in frenzy, but in joy. She ran the perimeter of the arena, as if it were still full, as if the crowd still waited in awe. Muscles coiled and released with grace, her stride long and steady. The wind caught her mane, turning her into something unrecognizable, no longer broken, no longer forgotten. Ella's hand rose to her mouth. She felt tears begin to fall, and didn't bother to wipe them away. Dawn wasn't running because she had to. She was running because she could. A few festival staffers nearby stopped and stared, drawn by the sudden burst of energy. One of them reached for a rope, concerned, but Ella raised a hand to stop him. "Let her finish," she said, voice thick. And so they watched. As the sun disappeared behind the hills, Dawn slowed. Her hooves eased into a trot, then a walk. She returned to Ella, without hesitation, breathing hard but steady. Her eyes met Ella's and held them for a long, quiet moment. No one said anything. There was nothing left to say. Back at the trailer, Ella wiped Dawn down with a soft cloth, her hands lingering over the mare's shoulders, feeling the heat of muscles that were once too weak, to support her own weight. "You had that in you all along," she whispered. "I just helped you find it." The drive home was silent except for the hum of tires on gravel and the occasional shift of weight from the trailer behind. Ella thought of everything. Her father, the first time she saw Dawn, the laughter at the auction, the stranger who called her weak. All of it had led to this moment. When they arrived at the small pasture that had become home, Ella opened the trailer gate. Dawn stepped down with ease. No stumble, no hesitation. She walked to her paddock and stood at the center, facing the moonlight as if it were calling her. Ella leaned on the gate, arms folded. "You showed them," she said. Dawn turned her head and walked to her, resting her forehead gently against Ella's chest. In that quiet, under a silver sky, something whole and lasting settled between them. Not just survival, not just healing, but faith. The kind that builds one day at a time, between the silences, within the small miracles. Ella kissed Dawn's forehead, then whispered, "You're not the horse they threw away anymore." She turned off the lantern and walked back toward the house. Dawn remained at the fence, watching her go. Before stepping inside, Ella looked back one last time and saw the mare still standing, tall and unshaken. She smiled. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing. I bring true, heartfelt stories every day.